We know the walk. We know the voice. That rhythmic, thunderous authority that has commanded the silver screen for nearly half a century. We see the 2 Academy Awards, the 10 nominations, and the status of a living legend. But as Denzel Washington hits the milestone of 70, the mask is beginning to slip. Behind the calculated poise and the cool exterior lies a story that isn't written in a script. It's a story of a boy who grew up in the shadow of a silent father, a young man who nearly lost his life to the streets, and an icon who has spent decades carrying a broken home inside a fortress of fame. Most people see a hero, but if you look closer, you see a tragedy that has been decades in the making. Denzel's journey began in Mount Vernon, a place where his life was split between 2 worlds. His mother, Lennis, was the life of her beauty salon, a place of gossip, laughter, and light. But his father, Reverend Denzel Hayes Washington Sr., was a man of the Spirit, a Pentecostal minister who spoke to God but struggled to speak to his son. Denzel grew up in a house where discipline wasn't a choice. It was the law, but it was a house built on a fault line. When Denzel was just 14, that floor gave way. His parents' marriage shattered, and the silence that followed was more deafening than any sermon. Imagine being 14 and watching the 2 pillars of your world collapse. Denzel didn't just lose his family, he lost his compass. He drifted. He began running with a crowd that was headed for a dead end. He later reflected on those friends, noting with a chilling sobriety, "The guys I hung with did 40 years combined in prison." He was one bad decision away from becoming a statistic. Seeing her son on the precipice, Lennis Washington made a heartbreaking choice. She decided to send him away to the Oakland Military Academy. At the time, Denzel saw it as a betrayal. He felt discarded. He screamed at her, "You're sending me away?" She didn't flinch. She looked at her angry, heartbroken son and said, "I'm sending you forward." It was an act of tough love that saved his life, but it cemented a lifelong habit of solitude. In those barracks, discipline became his first language because his father's language of affection was one he never learned to speak. Years later, when his father passed away, Denzel didn't shed a tear. He said, "I didn't cry, not because I didn't love him, but because we never really connected." That is the invisible wound. The tragedy of a man who spent his life becoming a hero for the world, while still searching for the boy who just wanted his father to see him. Before the world knew his name, Denzel Washington was a ghost in the city. He lived in damp, rented rooms, rehearsing lines by the flicker of a dying bulb. His meals were often just a slice of bread and tap water. He was a man possessed by a craft that seemed to offer nothing but rejection. Each no from a casting director felt like a door slamming on his future. But the real tragedy began not when he was failing, but when he started to succeed. In Hollywood, fame usually comes at a price. For a young black actor in the late 70s, that price was often his dignity. Denzel was once offered a lucrative role in a film that would have made him rich overnight. But there was a catch. The script was ethically poisonous. It turned race into a spectacle and mocked the very people he grew up with. He was broke. He was hungry. But he remembered the words of the legendary Sidney Poitier. "The first few films you choose will define who you are." Denzel looked at that script, felt the chill of compromise, and did the unthinkable. He put it down and walked away. He chose to stay hungry rather than be fed by something that felt like a betrayal of his soul. That integrity became his trademark, but it also made him an outsider. As his career ascended with Glory and Malcolm X, the applause of strangers grew louder, but the personal cost grew heavier. He was becoming a symbol, a guardian of black excellence, a man who couldn't afford to fail. Then came the controversies. In an industry that demands political correctness, Denzel remained an uncompromising traditionalist. His Pentecostal roots never left him. In a 1999 interview, his candid views on sin and the Bible sparked a firestorm. He didn't back down, but his response revealed a man weary of the spotlight. "I sin every day. I'm not perfect. I'm not holier than thou." The industry finally gave him his Best Actor Oscar for Training Day, but even that victory felt like a double-edged sword. After a decade of playing heroes and martyrs, he was finally crowned for playing a monster. Some saw it as a masterclass, others saw it as a tragedy, that the world only truly celebrated him when he played into their darkest fears. Behind the scenes, the pressure was mounting. Rumors of health struggles and wellness retreats began to swirl. Denzel met them with his signature silence. "Silence," he once said, "became my loudest protest." But as we would soon learn, silence can also be a very lonely place to live. At 70, Denzel Washington's crown is heavy with the ghosts of those he couldn't save. He stood in the back pews for Whitney Houston, whispering, "She gave everything, and it cost her everything." He lived with the quiet ache of not enough time. But it was Chadwick Boseman's secret battle that cut deepest. Denzel had sponsored his path, yet never knew his son was dying right in front of him. He carried it in secret. Denzel murmured, "A king mourning a prince he didn't know was falling." Today, the legend finds his peace in the quiet. He credits his wife, Pauletta, for the heavy lifting while he chased shadows on screen. A faint scar from a heart procedure serves as a reminder. Even the mightiest hearts need mending. Denzel's tragedy isn't his struggle, but the cost of his strength. He proved that greatness isn't about being seen. It's about being true when the world isn't looking. Denzel Washington's story reminds us that even the strongest icons carry burdens we cannot see. His life at 70 is a testament to the power of faith and the cost of integrity. If his journey moved you, please like, share, and subscribe as we explore the untold stories of the legends who shaped our world.